Reciprocal teaching. One of the reasons that I'm doing the reciprocal teaching with this story is because Poe's hard. We talked about Poe when you did the notes, and for someone who was a drugged out drunk, he managed to use a vocabulary that's beyond most people's comprehension. Okay, but he's an amazing storyteller. So it is very difficult to understand him, and that's why it's important for you guys to kind of dig down and look at him. Okay. The objective is to improve your reading skills because you're still struggling with that, mainly because you don't like to read, but it's okay. We're going to work on it. What I want you to do is learn, notice up there it says learn to ask questions while you read. That's actually the number one thing that you need to do in order to improve your reading skills is ask questions while you read. Why did the author do this? Why is this element used? There's a lot of things to focus on. In your notes that we did, you had 20 different literary devices. These are the ones we're going to focus on. Symbols, mood, characterization, motivation, and theme. I want you to write that down. Okay, so I'm going to pause it while you do that. So the reason that I put on there focus is with reciprocal teaching, it takes the focus off of me and puts it on you. Well, I don't want you to go through these notes and go, which of these 20 elements? When you're flipping through the packets, I only want you to focus on these. Okay, so archetypes, don't worry about, symbols are archetypes, but I don't want you to worry about satire. He doesn't really use it, so we're not going to worry about that. We're not going to worry about juxtaposition, even though he does have it. Only focus on these elements when you're doing our assignment. Okay, that'll help narrow your focus down. It'll also help develop the skills that you're more likely to see on the ACT. It will develop the skills that increase your reading comprehension the most. Because while I love juxtaposition, it's really an English term that helps mainly with junior and senior English rather than reading skills. And that's what Poe and I'm doing with that is increasing your reading skills. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put you in groups of 4. Hopefully we actually have numbers that work with that. I'll have to check with absences. You will be reading paragraphs 2 and 3 of the story. As you read, you are going to highlight the different elements that we're studying. Are you going to highlight 20 different elements that we've been studying? No, you are going to focus on symbols, mood, characterization, motivation, and theme. That's the only thing I want you highlighting as you go through here, okay? So as you read, if you go, oh, hey, the mood here is really sad, or the mood here is really angry, then you would highlight that as you are reading, okay? Characterization, when it talks about Prince Prospero, if you look at that and you say, man, this dude is really arrogant, you would highlight it and label it arrogant, okay? So those are the only things I want you to look at for this story. The essay that you're going to be writing, with Devil and Tom Walker, we practiced, okay, body paragraphs. You actually have a full 5-paragraph essay, introduction, 3 body, and conclusion on Mask of the Red Death, and you've got it right here, okay? The things that we're focusing on, those are your body paragraphs, okay? So it's not a surprise. It's not something where you're going to go, I didn't look for those things. You know what to look for because you know what you're going to be writing over. And we'll do the essay as soon as we finish the story. And tentatively, that's planned for the end of the week. All right, so you're in your groups, and each person is going to have a separate role. Okay, one person is going to be the summarizer. Okay, and that person is going to go, what was the most important part of the text? And remember, you're doing paragraphs 2 and 3. Only paragraphs 2 and 3. What is it mostly about? What happened first? What happened next? And how was the conflict introduced and developed? Because you're only doing paragraphs 2 and 3 for the summarizer, you may not have a lot to work with, so these answers may be short, and that's okay. The questioner is the second person. And this one will be, okay, how did what we learn in the second and third paragraph relate to something else that we've already studied? And it can be from this 9 weeks, it can be from last 9 weeks, but I only want you to focus on which things: symbols, mood, characterization, motivation, theme. If you find a lot of similes, do I really want you to make that connection between last 9 weeks? No, because it's not one of the focus things that we're looking at. Why do you think? Okay, so the questioner will look at this and ask the question, well, why do you think this happened? You are creating the questions. It's very similar to the lesson we did last 9 weeks where you create the questions yourself. This time it's, why do you think blank happened? And then you'll create it from there. What do you think? So you're going to look at those 2 paragraphs and you're going to create a question that starts with, what do you think? And then as a class, when we're done, we're going to actually answer these questions. When blank happens, so you're going to choose an event that happens in those paragraphs 2 and 3 happened. How do you think? Okay, so you are questioning what you're reading. Okay. The third person is the clarifier. I want you to focus on the vocabulary. 5 vocabulary words that you don't know. Okay, so it would be, what does blank mean? And then you need to look it up. Okay, we want the definitions as well. The predictor is the 4th person in your group. And then you're going to say, I think the story is about blank because, I think the author is trying to use blank because. This is where you'll use your notes if you need them. Okay? And you're going to go, I think the author is trying to use this symbol because. Or I think the author is using the mood here because. Or this characterization with Prince Prospero here because. I only want you to focus on these elements. If you don't know what these elements are, check your notes. And then I think blank symbolizes blank because. And yes, you can look that up if you need to. Okay. When you're done, so you'll go to Padlet.com, well, my webpage, click on Mask of the Red Death, and then when you do that, it takes you to Padlet.com, and you have to do your answer. That's where your grade comes from. So you have to make sure you put your name at the top, okay, and answer every question that I put in the template for you. All right. The important thing is, how do you do it? Okay, so I'm actually going to do paragraph 1 with you and show you how to do it. So as I'm doing paragraph 1, if I write it, you write it, okay? So that you know exactly what you're doing. You don't know yet what your role is, if it's questioner, summarizer, clarifier, or predictor. So you need to do all of them with me, and that is why I'm actually not telling you, is because I don't want you to learn one role. I want you to learn all 4. If this teaching strategy works, I'll do it again. And so you want to be able to do multiple roles. Okay, so the questioner. If you look at the paper that you have in front of you, it's number 5. Okay, so everyone look at number 5. All right. Let me get to this one. Let's go with red. All right. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or hideous. So I have a question right here that is not letting me. All right, now it's working. Okay, so I'm looking at my questions and I'm looking for connections to other concepts. Why do you think? What do you think? Or when something happened, how do you think? So now I have a question. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Okay. So my question is, why do you think it had ever been so fatal? Okay. Now, the reason that I'm wondering this is because diseases are horrible. So what is it about this disease that made it ever been so fatal or so hideous? So I'm going to write that one down, okay, as a question. Now, we're going to come back and answer it later. This is your job as the questioner, is just to write the question down. Blood was its avatar, okay, and its seal. The redness and the horror of blood. Okay, I have another question here. Looking at your paper, I'm going to underline this one. Okay. And I'm going to go, what do you think Poe meant by comparing the disease? Is that how you spell disease? I can't spell avitator. All right. Okay. All right. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness. Okay. And then profuse bleeding from the pores with dissolution. Okay. I got another question. Sharp pains, sudden dizziness, profuse bleeding, and then dissolution. Okay, my question, okay, when they got sick, how do you think the sick people felt? Okay. Notice I'm not answering it. This is active reading. All you're doing is asking the questions as you read. At the end, as a class, we will come back and answer all of them. So right now, we're just asking questions. Okay. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest ban which shut him out from the aid and the sympathy of his fellow men. The whole seizure, progress and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. Okay, so connections to other concepts already learned. I'm going to look at this one right here. Okay. We talked about mood and tone, okay, last 9 weeks with Eli Wiesel. So how is this mood similar to the concentration camps? Okay. And I ran out of room, that's why I abbreviated that. What I'm meaning is how Eli Wiesel portrayed the mood when he's talking about the concentration camps in his speech. Okay. So I'm pulling in our focus, right? Mood was one of our focus things, and I bring it into a concept we learned before, which in this case I chose Eli Wiesel. Okay. The questioner, that's what you do, okay, for paragraphs 2 and 3. And that's all you do, okay, in terms of what's on your paper. Then, questioner, when you're done, you're going to go to my webpage, click on Mask of the Red Death, and you're going to type these questions onto your sticky note. Make sense? All right. What happens if you're the summarizer? Okay. So if you're the summarizer, I'm looking at number 4 on your white sheet. All right, the summarizer is looking for the most important part, what it's mostly about, what happened first, next, and how the conflict is introduced and developed. Okay. So now you're going to read it again. Well, I'm going to read it again because I'm modeling it. You guys are going to read it once. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores, with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest ban which shut him out from the aid and the sympathy of his fellow men. And the whole seizure, progress and termination of the disease were the incident of half an hour. Okay. To me, the most important parts was the description of the death. Okay. Because when I looked at what that paragraph was about, it's all about how people die from the disease. And since it's all about how they die, that's important. All right. It's mostly about how you die from disease. Okay. And then the next question I want is what happened first. So I go back and I look at it again because we want to make sure we're right. We're sharing these answers. All right, the death long devastated the country. Well, that happens first. Okay. So that's what I'm going to write, is that the disease devastated Now, this next line where it says, no pestilence had ever been so fatal, I'm talking to myself, I'm thinking, because I want to be accurate with my summarizing. The disease devastated the country. I think I would be okay to put the disease devastated the country more than any other. And I would be accurate, okay, because of this next line. So, what happened first? What happened next? Okay, so I look back at the paragraph. Blood was its avatar and its seal. That's kind of tied into it, so I wouldn't say that happened next. Oh, there were sharp pains, sudden dizziness. It describes the phases of death. And rather than write them out, I would go circle them. So the first thing that happens is sharp pains. I'm going to label that first. And then you have sudden dizziness. Second. Bleeding from the pores is third. And then dissolution is the fourth thing that happens. Okay. So even though I don't write it down here, we're saving time. Okay, so I would go up there and highlight it in my story. And then the last thing that you do is, the last question is, how's the conflict introduced? All it does is basically actually the same thing as next. The conflict is death in the country. Describes it. And it's okay if some of your answers overlap because you're not reading the whole story. If you were reading the whole story, the answers would not overlap, but this one was 2 sentences. So that's kind of why it does. You're welcome. All right, so the clarifier. Clarifier, on the surface, you have the easiest job because you're just doing vocabulary. But because this is Poe, it's actually one of the most important parts because without the vocabulary, it's going to be kind of like Devil and Tom Walker. You know, with Devil and Tom Walker, to understand the story, you had to have the symbols. For this one, you have to have the vocabulary or you will have no idea what he's talking about. So you have a really important role to make sure you choose vocabulary that you know kids don't understand. So don't choose, oh, well, I know what this word is. I don't want to look it up, so I'm going to choose this one. You want to choose words that students really don't know. So you're going to go through, choose, be creative and choose blue. Blue, yes, I'm just trying to be creative. The Red Death had long devastated. Now, devastated. Okay, I need to think about that one because I want words that kids don't know. Do I know it? Maybe, but do a majority of kids know it? Maybe. Let's think about that one. So I'm going to underline it and see because you guys need 5. No pestilence. Oh, I'm going to underline that one because I'm pretty sure that a lot of kids won't know pestilence. Had ever been so fatal. We'll underline that one just in case, because we don't know yet what kids know and don't know. I need to think about it. So hideous. Again, that's a word we're not sure about. We're going to think about. Blood was its avatar. Poe underlined this one, so we probably should go ahead and do that one. And its seal. The redness and horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness. And then profuse. I might know that one, but let's think about it. Bleeding at the pores with dissolution. Okay, maybe. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, or the pest ban. I know what pest is, but that doesn't sound right, so I'm going to underline that one just in case. Which shut him out from the aid and the sympathy of his fellow man. And the whole seizure, I've heard the word seizure before, but not everybody might have, so I'm going to underline it. Progress and termination. I've heard that word. I know what it means, but I'm not sure everyone does, so I'm going to underline it. Of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. Okay. Well, you've got more than 5 words underlined. So now you have to prioritize. Okay. Which 5 words, and you have to have 5, which 5 words do you think would help your group and the class understand the story better? So you're going to rank them 2, 3, 4, and then 5. All right, so I'm going through here. Devastated, I would say, is maybe 50-50, so I'm not going to do that one. But pestilence, it's an important word, and just in case, I'm going to do that one. Okay, so we're going to check that one. Fatal, people watch TV all the time, people die, so I'm gonna skip that one. Okay, hideous, they probably know that one. Avatar, it's already underlined, so I'm definitely going to do that one. Seal, I really don't think they're talking about an animal here. So we probably need to check that one out just to see what they're meaning when they use it. Profuse, that one's really an important word. It's talking about how they die. So let's go ahead and do that one. And then dissolution, again, it's how they die, so we're going to put that one. Well, I've hit my 5. Okay. And now, are you done? No, you have to look them up because your answers have to go in Padlet. So I'm actually going to pause it. All right, so you've looked up the words. You can use Siri like I did, or you can actually type them in. Notice I had to actually type in seal. It's because there's different seals. Okay? And so if you just said into Siri like I would have, it would have come up with a lot of different things. Same thing with Avatar. I got the movie the first time I did it, so I had to type in definition of Avatar. So just make sure you actually get the definition and that it's the right part of speech when you do it. Okay. Now, is the clarifier done? No. You're going to go to my webpage. You're going to click on Mask of the Red Death activity, and you're going to type your answer into your sticky note, making sure you put your name on it. Okay, and then the next one, the predictor. So looking at your paper, I'm on number 7. I've read this quite a few times, so I'm actually going to skip this step since the time. I think the story is about... Right, I should model it. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal and so hideous. Blood is its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, or the pest ban which shut him out from the aid and from the sympathy of his fellow men. And the whole seizure, progress and termination from the disease, were the incidents of half an hour. Okay. All right, my first question, I think the story is about a disease because, now on Padlet you'll actually have to type the sentence, but on your story you can do this. And I'm going to label that number 1, and then I'm going to put number 1 there, because that saves me from having to write out that whole long sentence. Okay, I've got my proof, I've just highlighted it in the story. Okay. And then the next thing I'm looking for is I think the author is trying to use blank element. So our focus is symbols, mood, characterization. Ooh, characterization. Avatar is an actual character. So I think I'm going to do characterization here. I think the author is using characterization for the disease to make it more scary. Now, we're not worried about you being right. It's just a hypothesis, okay? The next question. I think blank symbolizes because. So I'm going to go through here. We know that symbols are items, numbers, colors, and nature. Well, I didn't see any nature, but I did see a color. Saw red there. So I think red symbolizes death because it's describing the blood during the person dying. Now, predictor, you're not done yet. Okay, you're going to go to the web page, you're going to click on Mask of the Red Death, and then you're going to type in your answers.